Gonna be late. All right, we'll call Committee of the Whole to order. I think Councilmember Burlick won't be joining us, or he'll be late. Late. Okay. Yes. His child has a special event. We have too many high excelling council kids these days. They're also getting recognized at school board meetings, so it's a good problem to have. All right, so first I will move to approve the minutes of the March 30th Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Motions are made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Okay, so we have two main items on the agenda for tonight. The first is, we have the litigation update regarding pending litigation, and then we also have the charter amendment related to redistricting. So, and we thought probably the litigation update might be about a half an hour, do we think would be sufficient? And that's with time for questions? Yeah, okay. So maybe what we'll do is, why don't we do the charter first, and then we'll just save a half an hour at the end for that. So, so this, to refresh everybody's memory, this is Ordinance 19/2026. So this is the one regarding redistricting, establishing a redistricting process for the wards, the 4 wards. And the charter currently, in Law Department, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I reviewed the charter, it just says that there shall be 4 ward council members, but it doesn't say how the wards are drawn, and they're currently drawn by just ordinance.
You're correct.
Okay. So, thank you. All right, so, so the Charter Review Commission recommended that there be a process. I think this is particularly relevant right now, given the recent Supreme Court decision, further upsetting the Voting Rights Act, diminishing it in Section 2, and allowing for more gerrymandering and congressional redistricting. So, important that even though I don't think, as I've said before, anyone currently on council would attempt to do that. We want to have things established in charter, which is essentially our constitution, so that we're not relying on norms and people's personal ethics, and it's enshrined in law, in my opinion. So, and that was the Charter Review Commission opinion as well. So the way this is currently written, the ordinance, and we had some preliminary discussion about this. The way the Charter Review Commission suggested that we do this is upon the adoption of the charter, at least 100 days prior to the filing date of nominating petitions for the terms beginning in January 28, they had the Planning Commission reviewing and making appropriate redivisions, and then again and beginning after the census in January 2030, once the Secretary of State proclaims the population of cities, then the Planning Commission shall review and make appropriate redivisions of the city into 4 wards. And then it sets out some ways in which those should be drawn, some parameters that they need to be nearly equal in population, composed of contiguous and compact territory bounded by natural boundaries or street lines. And then that City Council shall adopt and enact the divisions proposed by the Planning Commission unless Council specifically finds that such redivisions are not contiguous or compact or bounded by natural boundaries or street lines. And then those would go into place for the next regular municipal election. So we had some conversation last time. It seemed like most folks were in agreement that it's good to have a process. There was just some folks wanted to do some thinking about this specific process is laid out and any potential changes that you'd like to see. Vice President Baker.
Yes, and I think the process, and by the way, we could do this with an ordinance as well, like tomorrow. But I think that I think the wisdom of the Charter Review Commission is really good here. My concern is a little bit process-wise now, digging back into this, is we would essentially have a ward boundary for like 2 years, and then it would re-trigger again to do it again in like 2 or 3 years. So the intention for it to be every 10 years. So I'm just curious as to my colleague's opinion on that. Technically, it looks like it would be like next year would be a redistricting year, I guess, under this charter's prescriptive language. And then after we got the census data, which typically comes in, I think, like at the end of 2030, then we would do it again for the elections held, and our elections are typically held in odd number years. So I guess 2031. So it would be like a weird, and assuming population wouldn't change that much. I'm just curious if we're good with that. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll, just to clarify, I think when this was originally, I think this is pretty much the same as what the law department sent. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but one of the things in Section 1, though, that was changed is because it's been a while since charter review, so Center, that was 2024, I think, that they finished their work, and then, so it's, when they first would have sent this in, it might have been going into do this process now, and that would have been a couple of years ago. So now that we're getting closer to 2030, we could take out that initial 2028 redistricting and just wait until the 2030 census at this time, so you don't have that weird thing. The other thing, I was trying to think through that time-wise too, in terms of, it makes sense to do it certainly after the census so that we have that fresh data, but making sure that aligns so that that the recommendations would come in and be able to be adopted before the filing deadline. So,
like I think substantially in advance of the filing deadline.
Right.
Right.
So, so that would be June, right? So, yes, June it would be the filing deadline if we have a primary, which also goes to the ranked choice voting thing. But in any case, for council and mayor.
Typically June, yeah, because it's
June.
September
election.
September is
Yeah, so that'd be June. So if the census data came out at the end of 2030, it would have 6 months, but not really, because you'd want to have it published before.
And then it would have to go through the planning commission process and then come to us for approval.
Right.
Council for approval.
Right. So that's something to think about. Whether it would be in effect for the 31 election. I also did want to mention that I did look up, so the last time the words were established by ordinances, as Vice President Baker mentioned, we could do this by ordinance. The only downside to that is, again, because we can do it by ordinance, a future council can undo it by ordinance. So, whereas putting it in the charter makes it that the voters have the control. But the last time the wards were established, the current ordinances were done in 1971, establishing the current 4 wards. So it's been a long time since this was looked at. Other council members? Councilmember Bixenstein.
Thank you, President Keppel. Yeah, I think it makes sense for us to explore this, and I agree with being process-oriented. This question, I guess, is a bit specific to me, but really it could be applicable to anybody in a hypothetical. As a ward council person who oversees a ward that currently does have a higher population, but also lives near the boundary of that ward, I could put myself in a scenario where I switch wards, and I'm not so much concerned about what happens to me there per se, but more so just as part of this process, I guess we have to think through what happens in a scenario like that, because it could happen elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and that is true, and that is also kind of one of those things too, where it would be an unfortunate consequence for the current council members, but also taking it out of. The reverse of that is, of course, at the state and federal level, we see maps being intentionally drawn so that, elected politicians get to choose their districts rather than the district choosing the politicians. So it is an unfortunate potential consequence that could happen as well. Yeah, Councilman Bixenstein.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not so much concerned about my particular situation, but more so just having a policy in place for if that were to occur down the road.
Other council members? Councilmember Striebig.
Thank you. I echo my colleagues' concern. I, too, am near a border for a ward, and Lord knows another council person from Ward 2 on this dais is probably not necessary. And I agree that we could look at that. We should consider that if you're an incumbent elected official, that you cannot get drawn out of your ward. I mean, there's got to be some kind of language that we could put in there. And I think by the time we get to this, if we go into the third, when we talk about 2030, may not be a concern for myself, but going into the future, I think that is something to consider for people that come in one week and you're on council and then you're drawn out of your district. And I don't think that's very fair either.
Vice President Baker.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to think about it from our perspective, right? We're the current holders of these seats, right? Particularly the warded folks. But I think if you think about it from the perspective of the charter, ultimately this would come before council. So the whole point here is that this comes before council, and I think that having a good process in place is really important. And the wards don't belong to us; they belong to the residents of the city or the voters of the city, or however we want to say it. And so, the one thing I think about is as a lawyer, your eyes always go to the shall language. And that's where I think shall adopt unless, right? And so the question becomes, is it a strong presumption of adoption based upon the Planning Commission's recommendation? Now, I think at the end of the day, you're never going to have a process that is entirely void of, politics is a bad word, but politics is people talking to each other and thinking about how we should govern our city, right? That's not a bad word. That's just how we govern our city. So honestly, I think this is a really good thing, and I think it would, candidly, right, I'd probably get more streets, right, if we're thinking about it from a personal perspective. Ward 1, surface area-wise, if land could vote, Ward 1 would have an outsized, kind of position in the city.
More to canvas?
What?
You're going to have more to canvas?
A little more spread out in Ward 1. So walking Ernie's neighborhood is a little different than walking where I grew up on Rio. So yeah, so it's one of those things. I think that this is a fair. The only thing I would kind of focus on is the shall, because I think that and I'm interested in the law department's analysis of this as well. I think what they're trying to do, the Charter Review Commission, is say that we don't want you to take into account other factors other than contiguous, compact, bounded by natural boundaries or street lines, or doesn't provide for equal population distribution. So I guess, that opens up a process where technically if Planning Commission recommends something and City Council changes it, because that's the way this process goes, they recommend, we determine for adoption. What does that look like? Is it a taxpayer lawsuit against the city for, City Council for not following because they think it's not compact enough, or our decision was because it was, actually this one's more contiguous. And so I'm just curious if we thought about that from a law department standpoint of what that would look like.
We didn't. And obviously, a taxpayer suit is possible in a lot of different scenarios. I think the commission mostly wanted to make sure that it was commemorated in the charter that there be some process, and that future councils couldn't just throw out that work that had been done. And like Council President Keppel was saying, with gerrymandering, and be like, nope, we think there's better lines because that would suit the candidates or the parties or whatever. So that language was very carefully drafted. I don't remember, Councilwoman Steiner, was that language taken from somewhere else? Oh, you're recused, sorry. I forgot.
Don't do it.
I almost did. I almost blew it. I know that a lot of research went into this in this specific language, and like I said, I think the idea is just to make sure that, like you stated, Councilman Baker, that the words are based on those factors, and that other matters or thought processes don't come into that process. I mean, there are opinions that the dividing line should be east and west and not north-south, like all sorts of different conversations that were had, but this is kind of what they honed in on as being the minimum language in the charter.
I'll just add to that, if I may, Council President. The City Council obviously is accountable as an institution to the voters. The Planning Commission is not. Something for you to think about, because under this verbiage, and I certainly respect the Charter Review Commission, City Council, even in their best of judgment and discretion, would not be able to stray from those factors if it's in there. So we're putting a lot of trust in the Planning Commission to get it right, to have the best of motivations and incentives, and if not, there's no accountability. So I think this is somewhat related to what the Vice President was just speaking to, something for Council to think about if you want to defer that kind of decision-making to the Commission.
Thank you. Another thought that I had, one of the reasons the Planning Commission was suggested and Charter Commission was because of they would have experience looking at mapping software and those sorts of things. However, it is also worth noting, in addition to Director Varga's point, is it is a smallish body that isn't necessarily representative of the community in a lot of ways. So another thought is, you know, to Director Varga's point is I understand the accountability issue. It's also the taking it out of, you know, a lot of folks have looked at ways to take district drawing, like at the state level, out of the hands of the candidates who could benefit from drawing the lines. So what does that look like? But another thought is using the Citizens Advisory committee, which would be a bigger body and potentially more representative. Could also be less shell and more for council to approve, but then we're back to that, you know, we would be in the process. So things to think about there. It could also be that we that they make a recommendation and that if council doesn't approve them, the maps stay as they have been or something. I don't know. So open to other thoughts.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Bullock.
Thanks. I appreciate the thoughtful conversation. Also, by the way, I'm going to have to excuse myself, kind of like the council person to my left did, and then come back late. But I've got a few minutes still. So the couple thoughts. First, so I love the Charter Review Commission's creative initiative and proposals they put forward. Part of me also wants to say that, you know, it's also a valid outcome if the Charter Review Commission said we're not going to amend. Like, we don't just have to amend everything because we have the opportunity. We make some choiceful non-amendments. Maybe that happened, but I just put that out there from the perspective of kind of restraint when addressing the charter, which is our most enduring document. That said, I think this is a good one that I support and like to see the principle enacted. I've got a proposed insertion but also a couple on the process that we've discussed. So to me, it's prudent to have this based on the best data. So I don't feel as strongly about trying to amend wards or have a process for amending wards prior to the next census. In fact, I kind of lean towards waiting for 2030 data since, well, I don't know. Probably, but maybe I could be talked back into it. To address the timing issue, I think that's a good one. My thought would be that the council use decennial census data, which we don't control the timeline of when that gets delivered and verified, and we could probably research a little bit better, like different tiers of data come out earlier or later, and so the question would be, when does a mid-sized city like Lakewood's data come out? I bet you Rick Sika and Marcia Mall could tell us, or Dan Wyman could tell us, so we could have some working sense. On those years, though, let's say every 10 years we had an update or a potential update, we could, by, I think, ordinance, just for that year, move back the date of the primary to accommodate that and make it a rational.
It's in the charter. Primary. It's in the charter.
Well, so you include that adjustment, you know what I mean? Like that happens in the state elections too, where this year, state primaries are in May. In the presidential year, it's earlier. It's in March because of the different schedules. So that's just one option for how you might handle that, because they take the point like you want to not miss the ward cycle, which happens to fall, I guess. Is that always going to be the case, or is it going to alternate decades? Because if it's 20, it's going to be 2031. Whoever thought you could count up to 2031, for God's sake? 2031. 5, 9. So it won't be. So maybe what we consider as a one-time exception to allow the schedule to work in a practical sense. To me, I would consider that. You could even put that in the language of the charter rather than rush to kind of get data that's less ideal. That's just my philosophy. The other thing about whether the language should say shall or not. If you probably should say shall, you know, if we believe in this process. Otherwise, it opens the door to city council gaming the process. I think there's a loophole, though, because we could have the Planning Commission do its process. We shall adopt unless we find some pretty narrowly defined problems with it. So it goes into effect, and then we pass an immediately redistricting however we want. Because all that this proposal says is that the council shall implement the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it doesn't prevent us, does it, from redistricting by ordinance at any time.
That's a valid point.
So obviously that would be not in the spirit. Mm-hmm. If council were to do that, that could be a way that you address the one street, one half street issue for incumbent council members. On the other hand, to be honest, it's probably the spirit of this would not be to accommodate us as incumbents. It would be to say, tough, we're going to have to duke it out, and Cindy Streebig would flatten anybody who. I'm saying that with respect because you're such a strong neighbor.
Making perfectly clear, unfair to the voters as well, right? That have elected their candidate, the work that they've done to research and figure out who they want to represent them, to then say to them, we got to pick somebody else now, right? That may have never been in the conversation or been in the election.
Valid point. Last point, I would like to suggest that we insert language to get at the socioeconomic diversity, which a number of other council members have made a point of. I share the respect for the current north to south shapes because it does balance socioeconomic diversity, and that's not currently in the proposal. So the suggestion I have would be, and this is not great wordsmithing, but it's a starting point, would be you insert in the new charter section. So I'm just reading the commencing with federal census descendantly taken into close proximity January 1, 2030. So that's like paragraph 2. You would say potentially after, okay, Planning Commission shall review and make, if necessary, appropriate revisions to the city, 4 words, which shall be as nearly equal in population as is possible, comma, and then insert shall be as nearly as possible equally balanced in socioeconomic diversity, comma, then continue each ward. The spirit of that concept would be, right now as written, you could do 4 quadrants or something, and then you'd have a less affluent district, a very affluent district. I don't think that's the spirit of what's proposed here or envisioned, but it would be permissible, and maybe somebody would make an argument, oh, that's a good idea for some reason. The counter view is that having each ward have a balance of socioeconomic diversity, it brings with it some positives. Sorry for the long comment.
Yeah, that's okay. I do think, I have a vague memory that the Charter Review Commission discussed that point about the socioeconomic diversity, and I have a vague memory of that, so I'm not, but I do feel like that was a discussion point of how and whether to articulate that in here because of just the nature of Lakewood, how that could make it challenging to draw depending on the data. So it could actually end up making them less contiguous, I think. But I could be I do recall something being discussed about the point of the socioeconomic diversity. I'm thinking just to make some progress here. I tend to think that, I think at the time when this was originally drafted and the charter review submitted to us, 2024, so that would have been for the terms to commence in 2026. It would have made more sense to do an initial redistricting and then do it again after 2030. But I think at this point, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it for the terms beginning 2028, so that they would need, then we would do it again in 2030. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me because you'd be mid-term, right? So it would make more sense to do it after. I think what I'm suggesting is probably striking section 1 and just making section 2 the new section 1. And so I'm going to make a motion to do that.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention or abstentions? You said you abstain, and I didn't hear anybody oppose. Right? Everybody ayed. Okay. All right. So, well, that's some progress anyway. And then, another thing in terms of timing. So, instead of, I think the idea of connecting it to the federal census makes, certainly a lot of sense. You want the most updated data, but to the point of also the ward terms being on a 4-year schedule, how that's going to flow. So it might make sense to do it, so the next ward cycle would be 28, right? Is that right?
The next one's 27.
27 is the election term to commence in 20. So then that would be 32 would be the next new term after that. Yeah, so maybe tying it so it would be using the federal census data, but tie it so that it happens prior to the filing deadline of the terms to commence in 32, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess as I think about this more, I get concerned about, right now we have socioeconomic data with the census. We are in a time of great, the Department of Commerce is the one who runs the census, and there's a lot of monkeying around with the data that comes out of there. And and so the timeline, I suppose they need it for their own redistrict, right? Like for apportionment and electoral votes and those kinds of things. So it'll, at least the population data will come out. But as far as like the deeper dive and the sub-tab or cross-tabs, I guess you'd call them. So tying it to that, and then have a timeline, what happens if they bust the timeline and then we have like a, I guess that's how it is.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
It's a good, thoughtful point. I guess, so you could let that be determined by the Planning Commission as to how, so the proposal doesn't define all the terms proposed, that the charter amendment define all terms, so it's going to be dictionary language. So socioeconomic diversity would either need to be defined, or you'd rely on the Planning Commission, rather, with the Law Department's counsel, to come up with an appropriate metric. It occurs to me that Cuyahoga County has some data. Property values are pretty widely known. I don't know if that's an acceptable proxy or not. Maybe it's probably partly indicative and partly not. But I suspect there's a way that we could solve for that. It's a good point that the census has become another frontier in the never-ending and always escalating political wars, which is ludicrous, but that's a risk. But of course, we're going to get better leadership by the time the 2030 census rolls around. So you know what I mean? Like, so that would be, so maybe that's the question would be, if we can't rely on accurate and timely data from the Census Bureau, which I hope that will never happen, do we have enough local proxies to use?
Dr. Varga.
Thank you, Council President. Just some, I believe, to be facts. These are not policy suggestions. These are just facts. The criteria that the Charter Review Commission provided are objective. Population, contiguous territory, boundaries. Socioeconomic status seems more subjective than that. Subject to argument. Is the Planning Commission, these are volunteers. They have a full plate with respect to what they otherwise do on the Planning Commission. It would be a big request for them to get it right. And it's not theoretical that somebody who is disgruntled or a group disgruntled by this would not sue. We have seen a case involving Lakewood's charter where residents sued because of a variation of what a planning commission said and what the city administration did. It's like a 30-year-old case. And the appellate court deferred to the administration. So it happens. And so that's something to consider if we're going to accept some subjectiveness to this. What is the risk down the road? Thank you.
Thank you. You know, another point here is, well, two things in my head that are questions to be answered are, is Planning Commission the correct citizen group to make recommendations to us on this? And then the second one is, do we want to keep it as shall unless they are not contiguous or compact or bounded? You know, certainly I'm in favor of politicians not drawing their own district, so I want to find a solution here, but I do think another option is how the Civil Service Commission language is written around salary recommendations, that they would go into effect unless council takes other action, and we could say that council can only take other action, or if council were to take other action, the districts would still need to be contiguous and compact and all those sorts of things. So that's a thought, as well as sort of flipping it, saying it shall go into effect unless we take action. And then also on the question of planning commission or a different group.
Yeah, I think part of this is, the more I've thought about this, because this is hard. This is probably why no one's ever done it, right? Why we just kept it by resolution or ordinance. The most accountable people in the city are the 9 elected officials in this city, the mayor, the judge, and us. We have to go out every 2 or 4 years and justify why we deserve our positions, right? And the planning, and I know we have other people on this council who've served on other boards and commissions. I've served on planning commission. It's at least if past is an indicator of future, it's pretty apolitical. It's kind of more wonky than anything else, and less kind of driven by some desire to get someone on something. That doesn't mean that will not be the case in 10, 20, 30 years. I don't know, right? And we're trying to look through. But I do think that ultimately, if we don't accept their, right, and if a future council doesn't accept the planning commission recommendation, they better say why. And if they don't, they can be voted out, right? Those people who voted for that. So that's where I almost view this as like a separation of power thing. Like if there's an entity that's going to be making a vote that is controversial or that affects how residents in this city are represented, it should be this body and not planning commission. Although I do think that planning commission's recommendation, and Director Vargo said they're volunteers, they are, but they're highly skilled volunteers that, you know, have good experience. Now, others could be good too, and perhaps I'm myopic because I served on planning commission. But I think I'm less comfortable with, and we might not be here when this comes up, right? These seats aren't ours. We're just sitting in them for the time being and doing our best to represent the folks that we represent. But I do think that it should be this body's decision. That's kind of where I'm landing as we talk through this. But and justify it if we don't agree with what Planning Commission gives us.
Other council members? Councilman Book?
Okay, just listening to the feedback, 2 thoughts would be, so rather than attempt to, I would hope socioeconomic diversity is not excessively subjective. There's a lot of professional data out there that defines this. I think maybe, Law Director, your point is you're thinking ahead about ammo against frivolous lawsuits or litigious actors, and so you'd rather have clearer terms than not clearer terms as a general rule. One way that could be gotten would be you could just require that all 4 of the proposed wards each have a northern boundary on the lake. That's not going to change, not significantly. Maybe it creeps southwards a few feet, hopefully not too many, over a decade. And then you could basically define in geographic shape terms that there's a requirement that it's bounded on the north by the lake and on the south by the southern border of the city. And so really all that would be in play would be the east-west boundaries. That's an option instead of the socioeconomic diversity. And question for Councilman Baker is what you're saying essentially, if we change or soften the shall, council shall, to council will duly consider or council may adopt, then that puts the discretion back here. And then, the proposed checks and balances is the voters know who to hold accountable.
Yeah.
Of course, gerrymandered voters don't. But the geography of Lakewood is a lot more, well, okay, I won't say never. But there seems to be less scope for mischief here than across Greater Metro Cleveland or something, but maybe I'm...
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is, right, so we're in this situation currently at the state and federal level where gerrymandered voters don't have the opportunity to hold their elected accountable because they've been gerrymandered. So, you know, I do think that's much less likely to happen here. It hasn't happened. The districts are been drawn since 1971. They're contiguous, compact, you know, so they're just slightly off in population currently. So, you know, I do think it's less likely to happen here, but it is a fair point. So I guess that's where trying to do both here is, I'm thinking of if we were to tweak this language so it was civil, like I said, similar to how the Civil Service Commission's recommendations are. So when they make their recommendations to us about salaries, if council takes no action, they go into effect as though we had, but council still has the opportunity to take action. So that would essentially be, if they make a redistricting recommendation and we're like, yes, that all makes sense, great. And we don't do anything, it happens. And if we're like, oh, that's actually not better, and we want to tweak it and here's how, then, but I think I would still want some language in there that if we tweak it, they still have to be contiguous and compact and all those sorts of things. So we could tweak it, but not draw the snake on the lake or anything like that. I'm seeing a lot of nods. Any feedback on that suggestion? Vice President Baker.
Yeah, I like that, because I guess I'm right, and this is the problem with crafting what is essentially our Constitution, right, is that you want to see through the future as much as you can to see what may possibly happen. And I just, you know, because I think there are reasonable minds could disagree. Planning Commission could say, this is contiguous, compact, keeps streets together, and council could say no and have a map that also is contiguous, compact, and keeps streets together, right? So, and then it's just a question of like, which body should have more authority? I think the more accountable body should have authority. So I think, which is City Council. And so I think what you've described would be a good way to do it. And I think if we had, you know, maybe, you know, myself in a Word document or Council President in a Word document for a half hour, we could come up with that for consideration for our colleagues.
Okay, any other feedback on that idea? Anyone horribly opposed to that idea? Okay, I'm getting okay, gosh. All right, so let's let's go ahead and just keep this in committee for now, and we'll probably have a substitute in the near future. Maybe ask the law department for some help with that. Any concerns from the law department about what we're describing?
No.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. So then let's move on to our other item. And we still have all the other charter ordinances. Those will be, we're planning to discuss at the next committee of the whole. So please review those before then, but they're not on the docket for tonight. So our next item is the litigation update from the law department. And so I think you have the so I don't have the language up here. Sorry.
I will make a motion to go into executive session to discuss threatened and pending litigation.
Second. Motion's been made and second. Oh, and can we include in that motion the council staff and obviously the law department?
So amended.
Okay. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call.
Madam Chair, discussion.
Yes,
I
discussion.
have to excuse myself for this portion of the meeting, so I'll abstain from the vote and
Okay.
also not attend the executive session, but I'll be back for full council. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to just go down the line. So, Bixenstein, yes or no for executive session? Evans?
Yes.
Keppel, yes. Baker?
Yes.
Stubig? Hamilton Steiner?
Yes.
All right. Let's head into the... All right, Committee of the Whole is now exited executive session. Without objection, Committee of the Whole is adjourned. We'll start full council in just a few minutes. All right, we will call to order the May 4th meeting of City Council. If you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll now pause for a moment of silence. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Bixenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Bullock. Councilmember Evans.
Here.
President Keppel.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton Steiner. Here. Councilmember Streebig.
Here.
Without objection, I'm going to excuse the tardiness of Councilman Bullock. His son is getting an award at the school board meeting that happens concurrently, so he will be joining us shortly. All right. Before the minutes.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held April 20th, 2026.
Move to approve without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes. And then without objection, I'd like to move items 7 and 8 to the top.
Item 7, communication from council members Hamilton Steiner, Bullock, and Evans regarding International Compost Week.
This is Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, President Keppel. Dear colleagues, Mayor George, and directors, International Compost Awareness Week is recognized annually during the first full week of May. The goal of this week is to bring people together and share the powerful benefits of composting for healthier soil. It is an opportunity to highlight the types of composting happening in our community. Here in Lakewood, we are seeing composting efforts thriving and growing. This resolution not only recognizes this week, but it also highlights the work and efforts of Lakewood residents involved with Keep Lakewood Beautiful, who in partnership with Rust Belt Riders launched composting at Lakewood Park in 2019, as well as to highlight recent and additional efforts from the Lakewood Composting Committee for their grassroots efforts to expand composting citywide. A common theme which is consistent in our community is that the work of committed and dedicated residents is yielding results. This year's theme for the week, Compost, Feed the Soil That Feeds Us, is a timely reminder of the importance of soil in the production of food and the impact that harmful environmental practices have on us all. An opportunity exists to not just better align City of Lakewood outcomes with the Climate Action Plan, but to face the call for greater sustainability citywide. Please join us in celebrating and recognizing International Compost Awareness Week. Thank you. I move to receive and file that communication.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 8, Resolution 2026-28, resolution to join with communities across the world to celebrate International Compost Awareness Week during the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2026.
Do we have folks signed in to speak on this? Okay. So why don't we do that before I make a motion here? Or I guess I could go ahead and make a motion. I'll go ahead and move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion from council members while the sheet's coming up. Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, President Keppel. Straight from history, I'm going to read to you a summary of meeting minutes provided to me by Keep Lakewood Beautiful chairperson, because these words succinctly sum up the history of composting in Lakewood since 2019. On May 7th, 2019, representatives from Keep Lakewood Beautiful, KLB, met with Rust Belt Riders, Dan Brown, and other community organizations to discuss the potential development of a composting program. Subsequently, 3 KLB members met with Public Works Director Joe Bano to further explore the feasibility of a community composting initiative. In July 2019, Dan Brown of Rust Belt Riders delivered a formal presentation to Joe Bano outlining the proposed program. By August 2019, Rust Belt Riders, in collaboration with KLB and the City of Lakewood, initiated the composting program. The first drop-off site was established at Lakewood Park, located behind the old stone house. The program was offered at a cost of $5 per month and included a bin for participants, along with unlimited access to the compost drop-off location. KLB supported the initiative through outreach and promotional efforts. Rust Belt Riders also distributed a community survey which indicated strong interest in the program. KLB explored additional marketing opportunities, including outreach to local restaurants during its Adopt a Spot breakfast and promotion via social media channels. In September 2019, the composting program officially launched with 2 bins in operation, serviced twice weekly on Mondays and Thursdays. The city and KLB promoted the program through their respective social media platforms. Media coverage followed, including an article published in the Sun Post Herald on November 7th, 2019, as well as coverage in the Observer. In January of 2021, Rust Belt Riders, KLB, and the city worked together to get an additional location added at Madison Park. There ends that history lesson. So recently, the past couple of years has brought a new desire to expand composting services in Lakewood, including expansion to a free citywide composting service. Other communities in Northeast Ohio have successfully implemented free citywide composting services, including Beechwood, Cleveland Heights, and Shaker Heights. A group of committed, dedicated, and passionate residents forming into a grassroots group, Lakewood Composting Committee, has worked with city administration and council members to bring to life a plan for citywide composting. Council and city administration have worked in a collaborative manner with the planning department taking the lead role in the creation and dissemination of a survey to residents inquiring of their desire, interest, and or knowledge of composting. A sneak peek of survey results, thank you Director Byington, reveals a high interest in composting at 89%, a rate of current composting of 52%, with 57% interested in learning more about composting. Of course, there is a lot more information to dig into, and I will look to and work with the planning director and her staff for next steps. But preliminarily, there is a great opportunity for greater education about composting and a high desire for residents to start composting that currently are not. I appreciate Rust Belt Writers for being great partners in this work and for the efforts of all community groups and members to make their mark on Lakewood history. Without the dedication and commitment of volunteers, these efforts would not be realized. I commend all that have been involved and all who continue to be involved in these efforts. There is more I would love to say, but I feel I've already taken too much time, but I will spare everyone as I'm sure we will have additional conversation on next steps. I cannot stress enough just how critical composting will become and how important compost will be needed to help meet the growing needs of local food sources, and also in how important it will be in Lakewood meeting the goals of the Climate Action Plan. I look forward to continuing to work in meeting those goals.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to say I'm very happy to co-sponsor this resolution, and thanks to the administration, especially the planning department, for the support. And special thanks to Councilwoman Hamilton Steiner, who's really been taking the charge on composting and all the things we're trying to get going in the city. So I certainly appreciate that and looking forward to where we can go from here.
Thank you. Other council members? Councilmember Strubig.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. This is very impressive. Been waiting for this for a while. I have myself been composting for 15 years, and my garden loves it. And just thrilled that we as a city are moving into this next phase where we're separating out our trash more appropriately so that things don't end up in landfills. So thank you all that are involved in this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll just add, oh, go ahead, Councilman Bixenstein.
Thank you, President Keppel. I want to concur with my colleagues here. Really value, composting both for the ability to develop nutrient-rich soil, but also, of course, for reducing landfill waste. It's sort of a double win when it comes to composting, and I appreciate my colleagues bringing this to the forefront. I see some of my friends from Keep Lakewood Beautiful in the crowd tonight, so I want to thank them as well as, of course, Rust Belt Riders, and I look forward to contributing to this effort however we can.
Thank you. Other council members, anyone else? I'll just add that, we composted our home, and we have for many years, and actually just upgraded, so we have an in-house composting machine. It's really awesome. But not everyone has their own opportunity to compost on their own property. In fact, the majority of Lakewood residents rent and may or may not have access to their own outdoor composting or a place to put that. So increasing those opportunities, and like we've seen when the city went to mandatory recycling, reducing that recycling waste from the stream is less going to the landfill. That also has economic impacts in that we're not paying to landfill things that could be recycled in that case, or in this case, could be composted and is actually returning back to literally Lakewood's earth, potentially, things that came from here, and how much of that waste is food stream. So it's just a win-win, and like Councilmember Hamilton Steiner mentioned about with our climate action plan as well, that we're not just landfilling that waste, but that we would also be transporting that, which is also fuel to be used to be transporting it to a landfill, and instead it's being repurposed in a much more climate-friendly way. So great to see this initiative move forward. I also want to thank the citizens who first brought this to our attention. It's been an ongoing effort, but with the compost committee at our community conversations last summer that brought this up as something that they'd like to see, expanding our ability to compost in the city, and very excited to see that discussion, continue to bear fruit and show that we really do take that input from residents seriously. With that input from residents, we do have someone signed in to speak. So on this topic, which is Zoe Appisdorf. You push the button so it turns green. Thank you.
Sure can. Thank you for having me this evening. Many of the names that have already been mentioned are names that I also want to uplift. That's Keep Lakewood Beautiful, the Composting Consortium, and all of you who I stand in front of tonight. All of this work that has been done, that you are championing, is work that's been done without a state or federal mandate. This puts you ahead of the other cities, the other states, in naming composting as what's important to you and to the residents. I want to share that just a few diversion statistics, and I'll let you on your evening, that since the inception of the program, both residential and commercial waste that's been collected totals 646 tons of food scraps that have been kept out of the landfill. It's with our partners in Rathland Soils, Ridall Green Partnership, and Kurtz Brothers that these food scraps are transformed into nutrient-rich compost and soil that, as many people do today, get back into their gardens, and that we've been working with farmers and cultivators across the region to transform back into food that then comes back onto our plates and into the very restaurants that compost with us. Of this tonnage, this equals 2,871 cubic yards of soil. It's a real feat, and I just commend you on what you're doing and what you're putting forward tonight. Thank you for all of your hard work, Councilperson Hamilton Steiner, and to everybody here this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's the only person that I see signed in to speak. Did anyone else want to speak on this issue? Nope, okay. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution, assuming that it passes, given the remarks that were just made. We will do a quick photo down front. Anyone who would like to join us up front for that photo is welcome to. And then we'll get on with the rest of the meeting. And after that, too, if you wish to stay for the rest of the meeting, if this is what you're here for, you, of course, are very welcome. But it is also not rude to leave quietly after the picture as well. So we will not be offended. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right, we'll do a quick photo down front.
On to the next thing. That's it.
Item 1, report from Housing Planning and Development Committee meeting held April 27, 2026.
So that is Councilmember Evans.
Dear colleagues, Housing Planning and Development can be met on April 27th to kick off a conversation about affordable housing in our city. We were joined by Planning Director Byington and her team, who delivered a thoughtful presentation about the current status of the city's housing-related programs and resources and how they relate to affordable housing. The city is fortunate to receive federal funds that support a number of housing-related efforts. These funds are used for a variety of purposes ranging from development of new housing, helping homeowners to maintain their existing homes, and assisting vulnerable individuals with rental assistance to prevent homelessness. Planning Department staff discussed the impacts and outcomes of these programs and flagged opportunities for how the city can further maximize and improve upon them. The Planning Department acknowledged systemic challenges that have limited the city from being more impactful, such as the strict regulatory and income eligibility restrictions attached to the federally funded programs, as well as the market environment. Council members and members of the public asked questions and offered ideas to further the cause of affordable housing. Council members expressed agreement that landlord education sessions should return to City Hall in person, and that the city should attempt to resume conversation with landlords about accepting housing vouchers. As Councilmember Baker articulated during the meeting, council members can help move this conversation forward in the community by helping residents make a connection between welcoming density and affordable housing. Without welcoming new housing into our community, demand will continue to outpace supply, and affordable housing will remain elusive. I have hope that our upcoming zoning code update will also help in this regard. The Housing Planning and Development team, our committee, will meet again to follow up on this important topic, and I'll add that we hope to do this in the community with the support from the Planning Department. And I'll make a motion to receive and file this report.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 2, report from Committee of the Whole meeting held today, May 4th, 2026.
Colleagues, Committee of the Whole met earlier this evening at 6 o'clock. Discussed there were two main topics. The first was Ordinance 19-2026, which is part of the Charter Review Commission's recommendations regarding establishing a process by which the city redistricts the 4 wards. We discussed how the 4 wards were established by ordinance in 1971 and have not been changed since, and the importance of having a process that is more neutral and follows certain best practices, such as the wards being contiguous, to avoid gerrymandering. Council members generally expressed enthusiasm for establishing a process. In the charter, we did discuss the specifics of the language of the ordinance. A motion was made and passed to remove Section 1, which would have had the first redistricting process begin for the terms to begin in 2028, and then again, the second part of the Section 2 would have the process happen again in 2030. So we moved Section 1 for the first time to have it happen in 2028, since that would only be a 2-year difference and be in the middle of the terms. And then it was also discussed about whether the Planning Commission was the correct body to review, and whether it was appropriate for their recommendations to go into effect without any action by a body that is accountable to voters. It was also discussed that elected officials can't be accountable to voters if we can gerrymander our way out of them being our voters. So it was discussed we kept the ordinance in committee and will continue to work on the language with the idea that we may change it so that the recommendations from the Citizen Advisory Board, in this case it's currently listed as the Planning Commission, shall go into effect unless council takes action and if so, following the same best practices that the Charter Review Commission laid out. The second part, we entered executive session for the purposes of an update from the Law Department regarding pending litigation. And I will move to receive and file that oral report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion.
Item 3, Ordinance 22, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Second.
Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 4, Ordinance 23, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 5, Ordinance 24, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances and to provide for the publication of such new matter.
We're going to move, first I'm going to move to substitute.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? The substitute just includes some changes that happened at the last council meeting, which were quick fixes that we just want to make sure we got in on this batch of codification. All right, any discussion? Hearing none. On the motion to substitute, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes. Okay, and then this is only, we're going to move to defer to have another reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 6, Ordinance 25, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Help Foundation, Inc. for the operation of food concessions at Lakewood Park and Madison Park pursuant to Section 15508 of the codified ordinances.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We're deferring on this because it has been referred to Public Works and Sustainability, and that meeting hasn't happened yet. So we will, that is coming up soon, and this will be again on the next docket. All right, any further discussion? Okay, on the motion to defer, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 9, communication from President Keppel regarding charter amendments connected to ranked choice voting.
This is rather lengthy, but I thought it was important to get it on the docket so that well, I'll just read it and you'll see. So, dear colleagues, I am writing to provide background and clarity about the interconnected nature of 3 charter amendment topics currently before Committee of the Whole. The Charter Review Commission's final report included 6 areas on which the Commission focused their review. Those 6 topics were manner of amending legislation, charter amendments addressing the process for getting on the ballot, ranked choice voting in the primary election, salaries of elected officials, council appointment process, and ward redistricting. As you know, at our March 16th Committee of the Whole meeting, 2 ordinances referred favorably back to full council. Those were manner of amending legislation and the charter amendments. 3 of the topics remaining in committee, ranked choice voting in the primary election, salaries of elected officials, and council appointment process, are interconnected and further explained below. Ranked choice voting in the primary election. As you know, ranked choice voting was one of the topics investigated by the Charter Review Commission's CRC and was included in their 6 charter amendment recommendations to Council. The CRC's final report to City Council, submitted July 1st, 2024, states, the majority of Commission members are supportive of the City adopting ranked choice voting in the near future, but given the uncertainty about the timeline needed to implement this overhaul and potential legal and legislative threats to implementation, the Commission decided to recommend providing the City with the authority, but allow Council the greatest flexibility possible. The proposed amended language in Exhibit F of the CRC's final report states that Council shall by ordinance adopt either plurality voting as described in Section 9.1C or ranked choice voting as described in Section 9.1D as the method for the election of the officers provided for in this charter. The CRC's final report alluded to legal and legislative threats to RCV implementation. One such threat that was discussed at the July 7th, 2025 Committee of the Whole was Ohio Senate Bill 63, which states, if the Secretary of State determines that a county or municipal corporation has, by resolution or ordinance, approved the use of ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting in a primary election, then the county or municipal corporation is ineligible to receive any local government fund distributions from the state during the period beginning with the month following the adoption of the resolution or ordinance and ending with the month following the last day it is in effect. At that Committee of the Whole meeting, council members received copies of an analysis produced by the Ohio Legislative Service Commission, LSC, a nonpartisan agency providing the Ohio General Assembly with drafting, research, budget, and fiscal analysis, training, and other service, according to the website. That analysis, dated March 26, 2025, prior to the bill's final passage, addresses a variety of questions, including whether, under SB 63, a city would lose local government funds from the state if it adopted a charter amendment approving the use of RCV. The analysis states that a reviewing court might find that if the electors of a city approved a charter provision requiring ranked choice voting, that action would not qualify as approving the use of ranked choice voting by resolution or ordinance for purposes of the bill and therefore would not trigger the loss of LGF funds. In response to a question from council at the same Committee of the Whole meeting, the Law Department stated, if we wanted to do this and to comply with what's before the House bill, the lower risk is to do it by charter and amend the charter to allow for ranked choice voting and take that issue directly to the people, assuming the bill holds up. Considering this analysis and discussion, Ordinance 21-2026 was drafted and then introduced on February 17, 2026, with the intention of mediating risk by taking the decision about ranked choice voting directly to the people through charter amendment rather than ordinance, and it includes a severability clause stating, if any provision of this amendment or the application of any provision of this amendment to any person, office, or circumstance is held to be unconstitutional or may result in the loss of state funding per state law, such provision shall become null and void until the relevant constitutional infirmity or state law is removed. On March 17, 2026, Governor DeWine signed Senate Bill S63 into law. Now that the bill has been passed, the question before council is which, if any, legislative option to adopt ranked choice voting. Following this communication is legislation as provided by the Law Department based on the original recommendation of CRC, and I intend to make a motion to refer it to Cal as part of our deliberation on this question. If ranked choice voting were adopted either directly by voters into the charter or by council via ordinance, it would eliminate the need for the primary. According to the final report, the CRC decided to recommend that council have the authority to determine if the primary election should be held in May, September, or not at all if the option for ranked choice voting, also referred to as instant runoff, is adopted as recommended by the Commission and enacted by council. The current language of Article 9 of the Charter places municipal elections on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, with a primary on the second Tuesday in September prior, and requires that candidates file not later than the 90th day before the primary election. The language of both Ordinance 21-2026 and Ordinance 27-26 lists the filing deadline as 90 days before the municipal election if RCV is adopted, moving it to early August instead of June as it is currently. Salaries of elected officials. The current charter language in sections 2.3, council salaries, and 3.5, salary of the mayor, states the salaries for each must be adopted not less than 30 days prior to the filing deadline for the office. Current section 6.7, salary recommendation, lays out a deadline by which the Civil Service Commission must make salary recommendations to council. If council takes no action or fails to decline to follow the suggestions within 90 days, the recommendation shall take effect as if council had adopted them. If RCV were to eliminate the primary and move the filing deadline to early August instead of June, then the Civil Service Commission deadline could be moved to early April to allow for the combined 120-day window. CRC made a variety of recommendations regarding council and mayoral salaries, including changing the frequency of salary surveys conducted by the Civil Service Commission. The Commission also noted that the mayoral elections and council ward elections are 3 years after the timing of the salary survey under the current charter provisions. Because municipal officials are prohibited from receiving increases during current terms, in the current charter, section 6.7 places review in even year presidential elections, then there is a minimum 3-year delay in any salary increase recommended by Civil Service Commission from taking effect for the mayor and ward council members, and a minimum 1-year delay for council members at large. Ordinance 16-2026, as before Committee of the Whole, would move the review to March 1st of each odd-numbered year, which would align with municipal elections and allow for implementation in the following even-year term. Should RCV not be adopted and the filing deadline remain in June, the 120-day window moves to early February. Given that Civil Service Commission appointments typically occur in January, this may not be practical. CRC's Exhibit A contemplated July 1st of each even-numbered year. And finally, council appointment process. The CRC recommended adding language to Section 2.2b to codify the current tradition of council posting an open call for applicants and holding public interviews following application review. Currently, this section also states that if a council vacancy occurs more than 2 years and 120 days before the municipal primary election for the next term of that office, the appointee shall serve only until his or her successor is elected and qualified at the next regular municipal election. Ordinance 17-2026 contemplates tying this section to the filing deadline rather than a primary, which could be eliminated with RCV. I'll move to refer this communication to Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Thank you for bearing with me through that entire long thing, but you can imagine how long it took to draft it as well. And I thought it was important to do this so that both council members and the law department have a chance to think about how all of these things are interconnected and be prepared to talk about them at our next meeting. Our choice on one affects the others. I also wanted to get it on the docket so that members of the public could fully understand all the different elements at play here and how they're connected to each other. If you can understand all that, it's a lot to connect. But all right, so we have a motion and a second to refer to Committee of the Whole. Any further discussion? Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 10, Ordinance 27-2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the City of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amended Charter of the City of Lakewood in order to allow Council the option of implementing ranked choice voting.
Move to refer to Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Madam President?
Councilman Bullock.
So first, thank you for all the work on this in the previous communication, and I'll reread it carefully, and it's a good reference. So this version before us today is what, and then I just welcome a little dialogue on the intent of you as the leader, putting this on and then referring to Committee of the Whole. The idea that this is an amended version that you think could be successful within the legal strictures of what the state has done.
Yeah, I'll summarize kind of my whole long thing that I just did in a hopefully more easily to understand way. So the version that's currently in Committee of the Whole would be that the voters would directly vote yes or no on ranked choice voting, which is, and then it has the severability clause. So that's one way to go about it. This version, this ordinance, is doing it the way the Charter Review Commission had suggested, and that was before the bill passed. But they were thinking about all that, and so this version would, if voters would vote to give council the option to adopt ranked choice voting by ordinance or resolution, which the Senate bill would, so the intention is to put these both in Committee of the Whole so we can have a full dialogue and be looking at these two versions side by side and discuss the legal ramifications and then how, which if either council wants to move forward with. So one way would be if this ordinance were adopted, we would go to the voters to say, yes, we want to give council the option to adopt ranked choice voting. If the one that's currently in committee were adopted, voters would be deciding, yes, we want ranked choice voting, and it would not be up to council. So that's both. I'm introducing both not to suggest that this should be a substitute for the other, but rather so that we can have a full discussion of the options and the ramifications.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. If a little more dialogue. So your goal is to give the Committee of the Whole, and by extension all of council, two viable options to consider. You prefer not to have the states decision be the end of the road for the community, but give people the opportunity on council to put this forward to the voters, and the voters have a chance to vote.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, we've discussed this before, is with Charter Review Commission did their work and made their recommendations to us, and so I feel like they deserve for us to give all of their 6 topics a full hearing. So this way we have, and I find it easier to actually look at legislation and rather than just discuss concepts. I think a lot of us conceptually support ranked choice voting. I know I do. But then as we had the discussion earlier today in Committee of the Whole about the redistricting, which is potentially simpler, but still as we get into the weeds on that, it gets complicated as we're amending the charter. So look at what the specific language of any option is through the legislative process.
So final response for me, there's a number of council members, it seems that yourself included, that feel very passionately about this. I admire the amount of work, and thank you for the good due diligence. For me, it's somewhere in the middle. I don't feel that this is something that I gotta have. It's a fair point to give council and the community options. I will, you know, and I'll say something I said in committee before this meeting, that it's also a valid choice for the Charter Review Commission to look at options for reform and choose not to propose something, because sometimes when you're looking at the most enduring document for any government, or you know, you could come up with other analogies to any organization, restraint or a little bit of diligent caution about how much we amend is also called for. So you know, I look forward to the discussion, come to it with an open mind. I will say I've never had any member of the community come up to me and say, we got to do ranked choice voting. The people who've been the leaders on this have been the Charter Review Commission members, and they count, of course, too. But to me, this is, you know, is a maybe. I really appreciate the thoughtful research. We do have a situation here where we're potentially inviting direct conflict with the state. The state has made a partisan issue out of this because I think they've cited an example where a different political party had success in Alaska, and therefore this, you see what I mean? So what we're talking about here is trying to have a thoughtful potential edit to the city's charter that then potentially puts us in direct conflict with the state, and the state, I don't know if is as fair-minded about things at times when it comes to this. So that's, and I understand what the spirit of this option is that in a legal sense and in a legislative crafting sense, it wouldn't be a literal conflict, but to me, that's part of what I approach this discussion with is, you know, is it prudent and is it needed and is it worthwhile to do this? And maybe the answer is yes, but I thought I'd want to put that out there, that to me there's a little bit of prudence on the side of being cautious about making big changes to the charter that then lead to a series of conflictual actions. So I guess I could have held my remarks for the committee of the whole, but I thought it would as good a time as anything.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's, as I said in the lengthy communication, is that the question before council is which, if either, to adopt. And it is also, you know, like I said, we don't have to adopt any of the Charter Commission's recommendations, but I do think we owe it to them to fully discuss them. Yeah, and also it's a chance for, you know, I will say that I have had members of the public, residents, advocate for ranked choice voting. In fact, I'm seeing one in the audience currently, that have advocated for this. So it is also an opportunity for the public, and that's something that, as I continue to try to reach out to the public to get them to engage on charter, is to hopefully give us their feedback in advance to tell us, yes, we do want this on the ballot, or no, we don't care if you put this on the ballot, or please don't. So it is an opportunity for us to hear from them as well, to have these public meetings. So, All right, so any further discussion on the motion to refer this ordinance to committee of the whole? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 11, communication from President Keppel regarding August recess.
All right, dear colleagues, with this communication, I propose that council recess from its regular meetings for the month of August. Barring extenuating circumstances, I also encourage committee chairs to refrain from scheduling committee meetings during August and instead spend time connecting with the community. An August recess has been part of council's customary schedule for many decades, and one that I believe results in members, directors, and staff returning to council chambers refreshed and refocused on our work together. In accordance with Lakewood Codified Ordinance 12103C, I intend to call a vote on the question of recessing from the August 3rd and August 17th regular meetings of council. I'll first move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And then I'm going to move to recess from the August 3rd and 17th regular meetings.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Just add, you know, August, we were successful miraculously recently in finding dates for our 4 council community conversations this summer. So lest anyone think that we're going to totally be on break, we're taking our recess to go out into the community somewhat too and come back hopefully refreshed in the fall. Vice President Baker.
And also those of us with kids, it's basically like the Thunderdome of parenting. When summer, like camps end and school starts on random days of the week. So we appreciate it as parents. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
And there's always block parties. So you can always hang out at the block parties in August.
Local block parties and Madison Court Community Coalition parties. Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. On the motion, second to recess from August 3rd and 17th regular council meetings, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 12, report from Councilmember Hamilton Steiner regarding La Swab meeting held April 15th, 2026.
Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, President Keppel. Dear colleagues, La Swab met on Wednesday, April 15th at 6 p.m. in their monthly meeting location of the East Conference Room in Lakewood City Hall. La Swab was joined by student journalists from Lakewood High School who were writing an article for the student newspaper, the Lakewood Times, which since inclusion of this docket item has been published, so you can look for that. The students were looking to learn more about La Swab and the La Swab meetings. The students asked great questions, and the board members were happy to respond to questions and engage with the students. ACO Crumley provided his monthly update for the animal shelter. The shelter is working on a new website but needs more time for the public-facing portion of the website. When the website is live, there will be the ability to cross-reference registered animals with impounded animals. Additional discussion occurred around the Lakewood Animal Shelter policies regarding nuisance animals and how the shelter calms cats. Suggestions were made regarding handling of cat behavior, and a member offered to provide training to animal control officers. Other conversation occurred around the perception that some may have regarding the Lakewood Animal Shelter and its current operational structure, and how to better educate the public regarding this perception. Saturday, May 9th is the La Swab Pet Food Drive at the City Center Park, Marks Plaza, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This drive will support Lakewood Community Services Center, LCSC, to provide pet food to families to help in fulfilling their pet food needs. Food can be dropped off during that time frame, and all donations will go to LCSC. Please consider donating as you're able. Your donations make a difference. Signed, me, and I move to receive and file this communication.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Thank you for that thoughtful report. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding 2026 Public Works Week.
Director Gordon.
Thank you. Dear President Keppel, members of City Council, the following is a resolution proclaiming the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2026 as National Public Works Week. The American Public Works Association is proud to announce the theme, Rooted in Service, Powered by Community, for the 2026 National Public Works Week. This year's theme, Rooted in Service, Powered by Community, acknowledges that the roots of service run deep in public works. It's what has propelled public works innovations that have helped our communities evolve into places where people can lead lives of purpose and possibility. Meeting the needs of residents is what gives public works its sense of purpose. Many times, public works professionals will never meet those whose lives have been impacted. Yet, with or without fanfare, Public Works is ever present, working in the background to advance quality of life for all. These professionals continue to provide essential services that leads the City of Lakewood to be a healthier, happier, more vibrant community. The City of Lakewood Public Works professionals provide an infrastructure of services in water distribution, wastewater collection, wastewater treatment plant, parks and properties, street maintenance, forestry, fleet maintenance, refuse and recycling, and engineering. They are what makes Lakewood a dynamic place to live and work. I kindly ask that City Council adopt the attached resolution to join me in celebrating the quiet work these professionals do that makes life better for all Lakewood residents. Please let me know if you have any further questions.
Thank you. I'll move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 14, Resolution 2026-29, a resolution to take effect immediately recognizing May 17th, 2026 through May 23rd, 2026 as National Public Works Week.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Councilman Bixenstein.
Thank you, President Keppel. Just wanted to say that when you're a new city council person, you learn really fast just how important the Public Works Department is and how they're essentially kind of serve as an engine for the whole city. And so very grateful to Director Gordon and his team. And thank you for bringing this to our attention, and happy to celebrate this along with you.
Thank you. Other council members? Councilman Bullock?
Thank you, Madam President. So, Director Gordon, if any department deserves thanks, it's the Public Works Department. Not that the others don't, but I bet you are tied for first with public safety for the number of calls you get, and maybe you get more one-on-one calls. And most of them have to be followed up with graffiti cleaner or cold patch or any number of things. And if you recall, when you were first before us for introductory hearing, before you were sworn in as Public Works Director, we said, you've got the biggest span of all responsibilities of any department in the city, and I'm curious as to whether that's borne out, but for sure you're, even if you've got a different view of that, your employees deserve our thanks, and I'm glad to vote for this today.
Councilmember Evans?
Thank you, Madam President. One of the things I'm always most impressed with Public Works is I think they start every day with a script, and that script is usually broken by like maybe 10 a.m. You know, we all think of things that happen on time throughout the city, and then we expect to be there, but every day something different pops up that's, you know, small and large challenges. So to be able to juggle all that and make sure, you know, the big thing gets done and the stuff we expect that gets done on time, that always happens. So certainly happy to celebrate and appreciate you guys.
Councilmember Strubing.
Thank you. I'd like to add my thank you also to the Public Works Department and Director Gordon for your continued excellence in serving the residents of our community to keep us clean and functioning. Thank you very much.
Other council members? I'll echo all of those sentiments and say that while most of what Public Works does is probably not recognized as much as it should be, we do get compliments on the regular about various Public Works departments. I certainly hear that a lot from residents, and that's one of the reasons that they choose to live in Lakewood is because of the excellent service that they receive. So thank you, Director Gordon and team, and happy to support this. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none on the motion to adopt, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 15, April 2026 Finance Department Vendor Report submitted pursuant to Lakewood Codified Ordinance 11103.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right, we are at public comment. I do have one person signed in to speak, but I think she may have left. Patty Davila. Okay. Yep. And all right. And we also have, welcome back, Chris Bindle.
Star Wars?
It is May 4th, so you're dressed appropriately.
That's, oddly enough, I found a way to tie that in, but you'll see. So, looking over the new version of the RCV ordinance, it does fit more closely aligned to what was originally brought up by the Charter Committee. The only issue is if it goes to the voters and it is passed, we still don't have ranked choice voting because it doesn't work within the framework of SB 63. So I think that's going to be quite confusing to residents. I mean, it's still an option if for some reason we think we absolutely cannot do the version that is currently in the committee of the whole. But I do think a lot of residents would be kind of confused if they go voting for ranked choice voting and then finding out that we still don't have ranked choice voting. So I think that's an important thing to consider when kind of weighing these two options. I think it should kind of be like the last resort option if we just can't do it. I do want to remind you that there is this severability clause in the former version. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to how well that'll work in certain situations with state government. It seems like it could be a really good option for our city, though. Could there be a way that the state goes after us directly? Possibly. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure how that'll work out. So that's things for you as a committee to discuss and try and figure that out and weigh those options. And so this is where I'm going to take a step back from Lakewood. I like to try and keep things local. That's your job. You know, we're here to talk about Lakewood, and we want to do things that are best for our city. But when talking about ranked choice voting, as much as I do think it is a solution for Lakewood, it's also important to consider how it impacts the nation. We are looking at our democracy crumbling every single day. We are going from, we are about to have an apocalypse of gerrymandering, which is going to make the nightmare we currently live in look like a dream. And ranked choice voting is one of those things that can help fight those. And I told you I'd bring in the May the 4th thing. I was supposed to say this before that, but you know, it's a way to fight fascism and extreme government and to help save our democracy. So I think it's important that Lakewood take this opportunity to possibly be a leader in not only our region, but the state and maybe beyond for doing what's right and trying to find a way to preserve our democracy and make it more equal across the board. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Michelle, did you want to speak at all?
I really have to say, Council and Council President and Council Vice President, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone into this. I cannot tell you, because we're dealing with this issue across the nation, and it's quite refreshing, whichever way it goes, that the thoughtfulness, the transparency around deliberations has been there. So I just want to, really commend y'all on that. And to say also about the whole legal piece that Chris brought up, that's for you guys to discuss. And I've offered this before, but I have legal experts lined up who are willing to come in via Zoom anytime you say so. So the types of legal issues we're talking about, there are groups out there who have done this for years and can really talk with the law department and sort of help navigate some of that. And thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Barbara, did you want to? That's okay. There's only 3 of you, so I figured I'd just ask.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to let the council members know, if those who aren't already aware, that the the Ohio League of Women Voters has endorsed ranked choice voting, and it's one of the issues that the Lakewood chapter is intending to prioritize with respect to educational outreach.
Thank you. All right. So that is everyone who's here that could provide public comment. Do we have e-comments at all? I don't think. Okay, I don't think. No e-comments. Wow. All right. Any announcements from council members? I'll just remind everyone that tomorrow is Election Day, so if you have not already, make sure you get out to vote. Polls open at 6:30 a.m. and close at 7:30 p.m. If you have a vote-by-mail ballot and want to vote that way, it does need to be returned to the Board of Elections Dropbox by the end of Election Day, 7:30 p.m. At 1803 Superior Avenue here in Cuyahoga County. Don't mail it because it won't get there in time and it won't be counted, or you can vote in person. All right, announcements, Councilmember Strubig.
On our calendar going forward, one very, very, very important day that you all should remember, May 10th is Mother's Day. So make sure you're taking care of your mothers, the other mothers out there, anybody that performs acts of mothers. It's an important day to say thank you.
You're here. All right, Councilmember Bixenstein.
Just wanted to also mention that next week is the Lakewood Spring Hike and Bike Week, May 11th through 15th. It's for school-age kids, pre-K through 5th grade, to encourage active transportation and to consider walking and biking to school when able. We realize that's not an option for everyone, so you'll probably see the walking school bus signs out more around town. And thank you to my council colleagues who are involved at the city, Bike Lakewood, and Lakewood City Schools for helping to make that initiative possible.
Thank you. Any other announcements from council? Vice President Baker.
I feel required to say that people should just slow down. There's construction on both the north and south end of Ward 1 with I-90 and with the Clifton Lake Connector. Bunce Road is a disaster, but got to maintain the infrastructure. Public Works Department's doing a great job, so just take a deep breath and make a couple minutes available. And kids are walking to school in Lakewood and deserve safety just as much as you do in a car, so just take a deep breath. Thanks.
Thank you. Any, Councilman Bullock?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sorry I wasn't able to participate in the Rust Belt Riders recognition and the composting recognition. Rather, thank you to Councilman Hamilton-Steiner and Councilman Evans for leading the way on that. I was at a Grant Elementary location where the school board had a meeting, and they figure into that too because there's a green team club, and the kids really participate and really get all the teachers and all the parents thinking about it and experiencing it. And they even use compost to grow a little vertical wall of basil plants and everything else. So, and I even made the mistake one time of telling my own son, like, well, okay, it's one step or something. He's like, Dad, it really adds up, like, so they're into it, they're doing it, and it's been a real educational, hands-on teaching and learning moment for everybody. So I'm glad that the city's also engaging.
All right. Any further announcements from council? Any announcements from the administration? No? All right. With that, no further business before council. We are adjourned.